Hi, everybody, and welcome to this workshop. Thank you so much for joining me. It's only going to be an hour, so we're going to keep it quite simple. And I'll explain very quickly the few techniques that I use, and we'll just try and follow it along. That's the picture we're going to work on today. I think I took this picture while I was out in Cambridge one day. I don't remember. I think it might be like 3 years back. Street lamp here. That's the main subject for today. And the tree behind is just going to be supporting the street lamp. So if you have seen my illustration on Instagram, you must have noticed that it's slightly different to the photo that I have done. So I've got the street lamp as the main subject with the tree behind it. So we're going to use watercolors. This is my palette. I usually use watercolor tubes, but it's not any hard and fast rules. So you can either use your watercolor pans or watercolor cakes, tubes, anything that you like. And you just need one brush today. I'm using one of these medium-sized brushes. This is size 8. And this is a similar size, but it's a mop brush size 0. So you get the idea. It's round pointed brush that I'm looking for. That's the only brush that we need, one of these. That's for watercolor wash. And for ink, you are free to use any pen that you like. So it could be a microtip, biro, any ballpoint pen, anything is fine. So I've got Indian ink and a dip pen. This is just my personal choice. Not necessarily you need to have this. Apart from that, I sometimes use these type of pens. These are microtip pens. So you could use this as well. And I also have a fountain pen if you fancy using fountain pens. So any of these are fine. And finally, I have a pencil and eraser with me in case we want to do the sketches initially with pencil. So I'll walk you through it anyway when I start working on it. So before we start drawing the picture down, I'm going to give you a little idea of the pigments that you could use. But as I said, it's not there's no hard and fast rule for today's workshop. If you don't like a green color foliage, if you personally prefer autumn colors, you are free to use those colors. So you don't have to stick to the same pigments as I'm using. So I will, but anyway, I'll give you the list of pigments I'm going to use today, in case you want to stick to the same pigments. So sorry, I forgot to mention jars of water. I have 2 jars of water. You just need one for today. I just personally prefer keeping 2 jars, so I always have fresh water with me. And I also have, if you have kitchen towels or any sort of tissue paper, I have a muslin cloth here, my baby's muslin cloth, old one, and it really absorbs water. I think that's about it. We don't need anything else. So I'm starting off with explaining all the pigments. Basic green that I have here is sap green. If you'd like to swatch with me, you can try that now, because I'm just going to paint little squares so you know what sort of colors I'll be using. So main color is sap green that I'm going to use. Along with that, for a little bit of lighter wash, like how you can see here, it's lemon yellow that I've used here. So you can try mixing them together slightly on paper and see how it works. Have a little warm up with it if you like. For deeper green, I usually mix sap green with a little bit of Prussian blue. Another option is for you to use Payne's Grey if you have, or a neutral tint. I'm going to make a little swatch for that as well, so you get an idea. So that's sap green and Prussian blue. There you go, that's slightly darker. I'm going to try and add a little bit of Payne's Grey, or a neutral tint if you don't have Payne's Grey. And then we can keep adding fresh pigment onto the paper if you want to make it darker. So you can see I'm not going to mix anything on my palette. I'm just going to go with my brush over the pan without mixing anything, no adding extra water. And then if I drop it in here, I can see it's going a bit darker. And this is how we're going to build in pigments, build in depth in our painting. Okay. So now for the tree bark, that brownish color. Again, I love a lot of mixing personally, but you don't have to do that. If you have a dark brown in your palette, you can do that. For I personally do Venetian red and Prussian blue again. And I get this sort of deep brown to nearly grayish color. That's what I normally use. And then I keep varying the amount of Venetian red and Prussian blue to make it either more brown or more gray. So I can use just these two colors and get a huge variety of colors with that. So this, you can see like a variation of brown, and you can see something like a gray here. And I've just used two colors, Prussian blue and Venetian red. Just different ways of experimenting if you really want, if you really like the process of mixing. For the lamp itself, most of it is done in pen. And I've just done a quick gray wash just to depict shadows on one side. So as you can see here, you can see a lot of white unpainted areas, and that sort of acts as reflection. And for the shadow area, I've painted a bit of gray. The gray, again, I prefer using a little bit more dynamic color. So instead of just using a neutral tint, you have the option of mixing up a more dynamic, vibrant gray. So you can use crimson red, and either ultramarine blue, or if you want it a bit more darker and duller, more gray color, then you can still use Prussian blue with crimson red. And you get this very deep grayish purple, very sad purple. So that's a gray, but it's mixed with crimson red and Prussian blue. To show a little bit of depth, I have also used a bit of cobalt blue. Just here, you can see a slight variation of blue. That's just pure cobalt blue. So these are all the colors that we'll be using today. Well, that I will personally be using, because I thought I'll stick to these colors for today. But if you don't prefer using greens, you can always use autumn colors like cadmium orange, crimson red, warm yellow, cadmium yellow. These colors go really well for a wash. So don't feel compelled to stick to one color. Go ahead and try. You can even make it pink if you want, blossoms. So it's totally up to you. So we'll start sketching now. So I'm going to stick to a small piece of paper today. You don't really need to tape it down because we're only doing a wash, but because I'm going to show it to you in here, I might have to lift it up slightly sometimes. So just so that the paper doesn't go everywhere, I'm just going to tape it down just for that purpose, but it's not necessary. But if you do feel you need to tape it, that's fine. And we're going to start drawing the street lamp. So as you know, this is a very symmetrical structure. There is a high chance that, you know, we can get it all slanting sometimes. So for it to stay really tall and straight, I just draw a straight line and I build the whole street lamp on that. So if you have anything with a straight edge, even another piece of paper or a ruler, anything is fine, to just draw a straight line. So there is no strict rule that you shouldn't be using a ruler when you're drawing. That I feel is it's very restricting. So you can use rulers when you need to. So I have this straight line here, and I'm going to start building the street lamp on that. So starting off with the top. Right now with the pencil, I'm only going very light and very basic shapes. So I'm not really worried about any details. So the top of the street lamp, I think it's something like a triangle, just doing the basic shape. And the main street lamp itself has a straight line here. And then it slants down slightly. And that's the bottom. So we've got the front of that street lamp. We just need to do one side of it. As you can see in the picture, this bit here. So you can see in the picture that if you look at this line, it's going slanting down like that. So I'm going to do the same, a line slanting down, another line coming down like that. And I'm going to finish the bottom of that street lamp with a little square for now. That's the basic shape. So you can see I don't have any details here, just a basic shape. And now here, there's that lamp holder there. You can do it any way you like. I'm just doing like a little heart shape just to show that there is like a holder that supports the lamp. But if you look at the picture, you might be able to see that. And now we're going to start with the lamp post. Again, not doing a lot of details now. I'm just doing that little shape like that. And I can build everything else with pen. So this is, the pencil lines are just for our guidance. So all I've drawn is this simple shape. It widens towards the bottom, but all the details we're going to give it with ink. So that's our street lamp in pencil done. For the tree, I'm not going to do a lot of details again. So the main bark of the tree, so as you can see in the picture, you can see there are lots of branches, and I don't think it's a good idea to draw each and every branch. So I'm going to stick with the main branches, and then we'll see how it goes with watercolors. So just to depict where the tree is, it's literally behind the street lamp. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the picture. We can change trees because trees are something that we can draw just how we want it to be. So it doesn't have to be the same tree. You can change your tree. You might like a tree in your garden or just right in front of your house. You might have a favorite shape, so you can stick to that if you like. Just a few lines for the tree, that's all. I'm not worried about anything else, just making sure I know where the tree goes. That's all. Okay, so now we're finished with our pencil. I'm going to get my pen. So if you're using a ballpoint pen, very easy. You just need to open it and start drawing it straight away. If any of you are using this one, yeah, just takes a bit more time and a bit more patience. Okay, so just dipping that in. Right. Now with the pen, we're going to add in a bit more details. So starting off with the top. Again, now is the time where we can do a lot of characteristic lines, scribbles. So before I start on here, I'm going to show what sort of lines you can use. So with the pen, I know we can use these straight lines. So with the lampshade, you can just go like that, straight lines. But at the same time, you can also make it a bit more interesting. So feel free to have a little bit of scribbles and characteristic lines. So instead of straight lines, you can start using little scribbles like that. So that's the top of the lamp. So you can see none of these lines are straight. They're all very messy. They go everywhere, but they still do have some sort of charm compared to a very straight line. So if you are somebody who likes these characteristic lines, feel free to experiment with your pen. So I'm going to start off with our lampshade. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you want me to stop or ask me any questions. There is a high chance I may not see any messages while I'm drawing, but I will check every now and then. But if it's something that you need to know immediately, please feel free to unmute yourself. So as I said, I'm starting off with scribbles, the top of the lampshade. And I'm trying to make the lines on the left side slightly more heavier compared to the lines on the right side. So heavier lines will make it look as if the shadow is all on this side. So that's the top of the lampshade, starting off with the main body. Again, quick movement with your pen is fine. You don't have to draw each and every line. You can break your line in between as well. So here, if you see on this side again, this is a very thin line. I've drawn like a scribbly double line here. So that immediately kind of gives it the look that the shadow is on this side. So that's moving on to the other side. So I've done so much. If you remember, I did a square underneath here with the pencil. So I have the guidance of that decorative structure on the lamp. So I'm not doing the square now because I have this decorative structure to work on. So I'm just going to put that in there. That's the back edge of the lampshade. There's another one coming out like that. Yeah. Now moving down to the lamppost itself. So if you look at this picture, you can see it's got a few layers, different layers. So it's got the top bit, which is a bit more wider, and then as it comes down, it's got one more layer and a long one here, with little bits breaking off in the middle. So I'm starting off with the top part. A curved line here, and then bringing it down slightly, slanting. That's the first level. Another curved line here. Line down, and then a straight line. Well, it doesn't have to be straight, just quick lines down. Now for the details, just some decorative bits on here. I'm just going to draw these lines. And you can make it thicker on the left side again, because that's where all the shadow is. And to add more shadow to this side, I can use these small lines for shading. And this is called hatching. So you can use that if you like here. Sort of gives that immediate effect of shadow. And you can also add few dots just to add more interest in your drawing. So you can have these little dots if you like. These are all just my personal style. You don't have to stick to it. So that's the lampshade done. With the tree, I'm going to leave it now and I'm going to start watercolors. So while I'm doing the watercolors for the tree and the lampshade, I will be a bit more loose with watercolors when it comes to trees. So after that, if I add pen marks over that, it's going to look a bit more dynamic instead of trying to draw the tree right now. So I'm going to start off with watercolors now. And then for finishing touches, we'll add all the enhancements with ink. So we're going to quickly jump onto watercolor. Right, so I'm just going to prepare the paint. I think I've already done the greens and the brown. Just going to add to it a bit more so I have enough paint to work from. Usually I prepare enough paint on the palette so I don't run out halfway through. If I do, and then the next set of paint that I'm mixing, it could vary slightly. So to avoid that, I usually prepare paint before. So that's sap green. To this side of the palette, I'm going to prepare a little bit of darker green. So that's a mixture of sap green and Prussian blue. Or if you want it much deeper, you can also use Payne's Grey or any neutral tint. And for deeper pigment, again, I'm using less water. So you can see I haven't dipped a lot, too many times in the jar. I've gone straight from each watercolor cake. So the consistency here is thicker compared to this one here, which is quite flowy. So I have my green ready. For brown, again, you're free to use brown straight from your palette. You don't have to mix. I think it's just my personal thing of enjoying the process of mixing. But if you enjoy that too, then you can try this. So Venetian red, you can even use burnt sienna if you like. And again, I'm using Prussian blue. I think even indigo could work. I haven't tried with indigo though, so it's worth a try. So I have enough brown. Another color that I'll be using is lemon yellow, so don't need a lot of that, so just a little bit is fine. And cobalt blue as well. And a bit of gray for the lampshade, which is a mixture of crimson red and Prussian blue or ultramarine blue. It's your personal choice. Ultramarine blue and crimson red would probably give you a bit more brighter gray. Right, so that's about all the colors I need, I guess. So I'm going to start off by wetting the paper around the lampshade. So I'm going to leave the lamp, getting fresh water. So I have a jar of fresh water here, getting that. And I'm going to go around the street lamp. If your ink is not quite dry, there is a chance that it could spread. But again, not too worried about that. I just like everything spreading, so it shouldn't be a problem. So wetting this area. To start off with, mainly this area, and I'm going to use some cobalt blue. So getting that on my brush. And I'm going to start off simply by dropping in a little bit of pigment, seeing how it goes. If I like the feel of it, I might just go straight in with it. As you go along, you can also add a few splatters. So load your brush and then go tap, tap, tap. That side is still wet. So I'm going to start off with sap green. So we have already got sap green mixed here and it's quite watery already. So I don't think we need our brush to be wet again. So I've just dabbed my brush on my towel. So I don't have a lot of water in there. Going to go into my sap green. And again, the same way, I'm just going to scribble like this. So if you see the tip of my brush, I'm not putting it down, literally scribbling. Or we also call it lazy stippling. So, and you can keep adding pigments even onto your blue. So if you don't want it too blue, we could even add more layers to it. You can also splatter at this point if you like. Now this side is dry. So I'm going to wet this side now. So using fresh water, clean brush, I'm going to wet it. Don't worry if your splatters get all washed away, it's okay. My water is not all that clean, but I'm not worried because it's still green. Just wetting that area. I'm leaving out the tree bark, the main tree trunk, just for now, so it doesn't get too watery. So I have that area wet. Going to go into a little bit of lemon yellow. I don't need a lot, so I'm just going to start by just stippling, dropping in little bits, letting it spread. And the best way to not feel too worried about it is to just go ahead and splash paint. So I'm not worried where it goes, but it does have a charm when it just splashes everywhere. I'm going to continue with sap green. Don't bother washing your brush at this stage because they're all the same combinations of color that we need on our paper. So again, lazy stippling with sap green. If you do enjoy splattering, why not go ahead and splatter? It might feel quite daunting that there is a large amount of water and it's flowing everywhere. But let me assure you, please don't feel uneasy with not being able to control watercolors. I think the less we try to control watercolor, the more beautiful it becomes. So just go with the flow, enjoy where it's taking you. It might surprise you by the end, so don't worry. So again, adding small bits and bobs everywhere, because I like to keep a little bit of unpainted areas as well. So instead of having a very flat wash, this type of stippling gives me the option of having unpainted areas or highlights. Just adding a little bit more here. That area is quite dry, so I'm just continuing with the lazy stippling, making sure I'm leaving a little bit of white unpainted areas as well. So I've got green down, I've got lemon yellow, I've got cobalt blue. Now I think at this point I need a little bit more depth to the painting. So I need deeper greens and purples and deeper colors just to enhance the whole thing. So I'm going to go into the deep green that I had prepared. It's a little bit more thicker in consistency compared to the watery wash we just did. So I don't have any extra water on my brush. I'm going straight into this thing that I prepared. Load my brush, and then again, we don't need dark color everywhere, but we just need it only in a few areas. So especially, I think now is the time I look at the picture and I can see there are a few areas that needs to be a bit more darker. So maybe behind the lampshade especially, we can do a little bit in that corner there. So I'm going to try and do that. So starting off with dropping in color. Maybe a little bit on this side. If you think it's not sitting well, the second layer, if it's not sitting well, there is a chance that there's more water in your wash. If that's the case, try having a damp brush. So just take out extra bits of water on there, go back into your watercolor cake, activate it nicely onto the palette. And I'm using deep green, so I'm going into my Prussian blue a little bit. I'm not washing my brush here. Deep Prussian blue, mixing that with the green. Quite thick consistency now. And I'm going to use that, try and drop in a little bit more. So this is the part where I can show it a little bit more closely. So you can see how it's spreading nicely on that wet surface. So that is very minimal painting with the brush. You're literally just dropping it in. So you can see it's not very similar to all the branches and how the tree looks in the picture. And we're not intending to keep it like that. We're going to change it the way we like it. So the way we feel it's going to look better on as an artwork. So that's, I've dropped in enough there, and I think it's too light here, so I'm just adding a little bit of pigments in this side as well, but not a lot because I still want a little bit of light. You can also splatter. Okay, I'm going to stop for the moment. At the moment, I'm going to work on the tree bark, which is brown. So I've already mixed brown on my palette. I'm just going to start off with the tree bark. And you can see it's already spreading and mixing with the green in some areas. Don't worry about that, it's okay. So I've got this dark brown pigment laid out on my paper, but I really don't want this flat wash for the tree. So I'm going to dilute it a little bit, making that light and shadow. So I'm going to wash my brush and using my wet brush. So just going to take out extra bits. So I washed my brush. I'm going to take out extra drops of water on the side of the jar. If you can see the tree bark here, I'm just going to run my brush on the side. So diluting that very thick layer of paint, making it lighter. And now at this stage, if I want, I can build in the texture of the tree. So I can add in more darker areas for the tree bark. At this stage, you don't really have to do the same as in the picture. Just go with what you like with the branches. Adding only a few branches here and there. Now I've got the inside of the lampshade will have a small amount of all the colors on the tree because of the glass and how it reflects and everything. So because all the area around the lampshade is quite wet, all I need to do is use my wet brush and bring those colors back inside like that. And then once I have that area wet, I can go in and add a little bit of bluish green. So I have cobalt blue and a little bit of green on my brush. That's a mixture of both, and I'm just going to dab in. Okay, so that's all we need on that lampshade. For the post, I'm going to add a little bit of gray. So if you remember the gray that we did mix initially with crimson red and Prussian blue, I'm going to take that. Very little is enough. With the tip of my brush, just going to add a little bit on one side, making sure that the right side is left unpainted, so that way I can show highlights. So, and this is the shadow area. Just adding a little bit of gray here as well. Yeah, So now I'm going to stop here with my watercolor. And next stage, I like to use my pen and enhance the tree in the background. So before I do that, I'd like the watercolor to be completely dry. Okay, so that's comparatively dry. Still a little bit damp, which should be okay. So I'm going to go back into my line. I've got my ink ready. Just getting my pen. Now I'm just going to enhance the lines. So I don't think we need a lot of work on the street lamp itself, but maybe with the tree bark, I'm going to add a few lines for the tree bark, the tree, all the texture, the tree bark texture. And it's just basically scribbles or broken lines. So you already know where you want the lines. All we need to do is just scribble. Adding a little bit of line here as well. Just adding more shadow here. So the street lamp is kind of highlighted. So if I do add more darker areas, just where the highlights are, you would feel that the post is more highlighted. So I'm just adding darker lines around that. And now a few scribbles for the foliage as well. So with the foliage, I'm going to use these scribbly lines. And I don't think we need it everywhere. We just need it only in a few places where we think we need more details. But apart from that, I don't think we need a lot of details for the background, because if we do give a lot of details for the background, then the street lamp itself will be lost in the picture. So just going to be careful not to overwork on the details behind the lamp. So basically just darkening the areas where there could be shadows. So for example, here I've got foliage and a little bit of bark, the branch that I can see, the tree trunk that I can see here. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of shadow. So I'm just going to darken that area. So it's all about observing where the shadow could be. Or if I show you the picture here, you can see how there's foliage here. And then because of that foliage, there's sort of a little bit of shadow or darker area on the tree trunk. And that's what we're going to do by having a little bit of shading just under the foliage. And you can have a bit more of the foliage continuing to this side. If you like, you can have more branches. And you can do that with ink if you like, or if you prefer watercolor as well on that, you are free to go back into your watercolors, add another layer as well. So either way, it doesn't matter. So I've added a few branches here with ink, just to show you how you can do with watercolors. I'm quickly going to grab my brush. This is just another option if you like. I can, because that area is dry now, any layer that I'm going to put here is going to sit on top of that layer. So I'm going to go back into my brown, and then I can add more branches here using the pen, using the brush. So just adding a few more branches with my brush. So that's another option. I like a mixture of both. If you look at the lampshade, you can see little bits of reflection of the foliage. So we're going to try, I'm going to leave out the bulb itself because I felt it wasn't necessary. That's just me. But instead, I think I prefer the reflections on the glass. So I'm going to go back into my green, sap green, and I'm going to mix a tiny bit of cobalt blue with that. So it sort of becomes that blue-green. And I'm just going to add a few reflections on that glass. So just adding a little bit of scribbles of the foliage. And then I can make it more blue. So started off with blue-green, washed my brush, gone into cobalt blue. And this time quite watery. I don't want thick paint. It wouldn't look like reflections. So mixed it with a bit of cobalt blue, washed my brush again, just made it lighter. And I think I'm going to finish that off by darkening the bottom of the lampshade. If you want to put the bulb in, the center of the bulb is a lighter color compared to the area around the shape. So if that was the case, while that's still wet, what you could do is just to give it a little, to give the impression of a bulb there, you can use a clean brush, take out all the extra water so it's very damp, and then maybe take out a little bit of the pigment. Okay, that's just the first step. So once you have taken out some pigment from there, so we've got that little bulb shape, but it wouldn't be complete until we add some darker color there. So another way of doing that is going to go into, do you have the gray that's left over from the gray color that we used for the street lamp? I'm going to take a little bit of that. I don't want a lot of water because I just need to enhance that white area. I'm just going to go around the bulb, mainly over here, just to add some shadow of the bulb. And then another round there. just to depict that there is a bulb there. So just basically sticking to the shape, and we're done.